Um, all right, guys, good afternoon and welcome to Using Your Reviews to Improve, the 8th installment of the Power Up tutorial series. Our goal is to provide tourism businesses in the NT a space to upskill as we unpack topics that have an ongoing relevance for your business. These weekly webinars are brought to you by the Business Enterprise Development Team, Stephen Miles from Tourism Top End, and myself, Anna Dakin from Tourism Central Australia, will be your hosts. The series is structured around the Business Enterprise Development Programme's 9-pillar model, which is a tool to help your business identify the maturity and gaps that can be filled in a range of areas necessary to running a successful tourism business. Stephen and I are keen to provide support for you and for your business, and if you're keen to learn a bit more about what we do, you can drop us a line after the webinar to arrange a one-on-one session. We'll be sharing our contact details at the end. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar will consist of a 45-minute presentation followed by a 15-minute Q&A. Throughout the session, if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat area. Our speaker today is Avril Carter from ReviewPro. ReviewPro is a platform that draws information from multiple online review sites into one place and offers insight into your own overall online reputation management. Today, Avril will share her expert insights about the marketing potential of reviews and how you can use your reviews to improve. This is an important topic as your future clients will read your reviews before choosing to spend their money at your business. Avril, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and I will hand over to you.
Great. Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. And thank you for joining, and thanks to Anna and Stephen for hosting this session. We've done some similar sessions with other states, and I think it could be very useful, especially at this time. I found that at this time, in some circumstances, people have a little bit more time to actually reflect and take a restock and think about processes within their organisation and so on. And also, as we emerge from all this, the impact of reviews is becoming even more relevant in some ways than it was before. So I think it's a good, certainly good timing. I'm going to stop my video just while I do my presentation because I need to flip the lid down on my laptop so I can do this. So I'm just going to take my video off for now. And then I shall start up my presentation and then share my screen so that you guys get the PowerPoint. All right, maybe Anna, can you just tell me, confirm?
That's looking good, yeah.
That in full mode?
Full presenter mode, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So welcome to today's webinar. It's obviously brought to you by Tourism Top End and Tourism Central Australia, Tourism NT, all of which we work with very proudly. And yeah, thanks for joining. You've already introduced me, but here I am. There's another picture of me. And I'm the sales director for ReviewPro in Australasia. And it's my pleasure to present this today. So today's topics, just a little agenda for what we're going to talk about. I'm going to run through some online reputation trends and talk a little bit around how to track and analyse feedback, focus in on online reviews specifically, and talk about management response and best practice around management responses. And then we're going to delve a little bit into more topical aspects of reviews, which is around, you know, how are guests feeling now, how to shape your recovery reputation, and some thoughts about the new guest or the new traveller, and some considerations around that may be interesting for you as a business. So just a little bit about ReviewPro, just a really short introduction. We have been around for around 10 years, developing solutions to understand and act upon guest feedback. Today, we serve over 60,000 establishments in over 150 countries, whether they be small independent hotels, tourism businesses, international chains, destinations, even investors who are investing in the tourism industry use ReviewPro. So we work with our clients and partners to enable them to leverage guest intelligence in a way that positively impacts both the guest experience and their results. With the information that we collect and insights that are generated, we help clients adjust their operational service priorities to be able to action guest feedback. Our suite of tools include online reputation management, guest survey platforms, and they're all supported by case management and workflow tools. And more recently, we've added an AI-supported product around guest experience automation, which is a messaging and chatbot solution. So at any one time, ReviewPro is being used around the world to identify operational deficiencies, such as like broken Wi-Fi, as reported maybe in an in-stay survey, isolating the issues around service of breakfast to guests of different nationalities using our semantic analysis, or deciding how to invest in a specific city using our competitive analysis, or allocating CapEx for new beds that could have been identified in a guest survey. So in terms of how to connect with ReviewPro for the NT, there's actually a few different ways. And as Anna mentioned in the introduction, there is the Business Enterprise Development Program, whereby ReviewPro partner with Tourism Northern Territory on a fantastic program that incorporates an element of online reputation. And through that, there's a number of really great tools that are on offer to support you as businesses. And I know that, that Anna and Stephen and the team also support through providing some of the data that ReviewPro provide for you as businesses through those reports. The second way is if you're an accredited business, you may have access to a ReviewPro dashboard for your business, which is basically a really neat introductory version of our reputation management solution, which gives you great free access to a really neat tool to help you in your business. And the third way, and some of you may already have this, but is directly obviously with us if you're maybe using our full version of the online reputation management, or you may even be using some of our guest survey solutions. So we're going to kick off with a poll to see if you're all still paying attention, which my assistant Stephen's going to help us with. So I believe that these questions should pop up on your screen actually so that you can answer them. Yep, so that's great. You can see them up there. So which of these are applicable to how you feel about responding to reviews? Do you find it intimidating and unsure how to respond? Do you have challenges with the high volume of reviews? Are you maybe not sure how to respond to negative reviews? Find it difficult to prioritise the time to respond? Maybe haven't delegated someone responsible for applying? Or none of the above. We have a great working response strategy. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to complete that, and Stephen, let me know when we can move on.
Will do. We've had 9 of 15 attendees so far, so we'll just wait a couple more seconds.
Okay, no worries. Yep, we'll leave it open. Have a think about those things, whether that's, it's always good to know how people are feeling about this. It helps us with the presentation.
All right, so let's end it there. We've got 12 of 15, and I'll share the results with everyone as well.
Okay, perfect. So we can see, this is great actually, that a lot of you, the majority of you actually have a working response strategy, which is great. The most difficult thing seems to be about prioritising time, and that is, you know, that's very, very common, and being a little bit unsure of how to respond to negative reviews. So that's great. So thanks for that. That's good to know. So to kick off, I'm going to talk a little bit about online reputation trends and what we're seeing today across the industry, but also across the Northern Territory. So I had a little sneaky peek into a good account and sample of the Northern Territory operators through our Tourism NT account. And we looked at the volume of reviews since the outbreak of COVID. So we looked at a date range since the 1st of March up until yesterday. And the pale blue shaded area that you can see going back to March is the volume of reviews. And then as you see, it just fell off a cliff and has really taken a huge dive. So, so we've seen overall the review volume has decreased across this sample group of, this is across, you know, thousands of operators, has declined 68.9% year on year. So this is a trend, and this is not just for the Northern Territory. We see this reflected across all markets at the moment, obviously due to the decline in business and decline in travel, that less people are reviewing. I have a little snapshot here of online reputation for, we can call it across the Northern Territory, because it takes into account a whole group of operators, including accommodation and tour operators within this group. And we can see that based on that same period of time, the Global Review Index, which is essentially the online reputation score based on all those based on those review scores, is 86.9%, which is actually tracking pretty well. It's a positive result. And we can see there the sheer volume and, you know, how it's dropped. The shaded grey area underneath is the difference. The semantic analysis is looking at what percentage of comments that people make or they make within their review, what percentage of those are positive and negative. So all the different concepts people talk about within their reviews, and our management response. And we can see that's declined a little bit. Not surprising, given that a lot of businesses have either not been open or they've not had the resources and seen a decline in resources and not been a bit more challenged in replying. But still, you know, a decent management response. But the purpose of this slide also is to highlight that in the context of reputation management, it's really vital that you constantly monitor all metrics across your dashboard page. So not just your score, not just your GRI, but what's happening also with review volume for you as a business, your review distribution, and what changes are happening there. And of course, your semantic mentions and your positive negative split. And management response. So these can all form really important KPIs for you to measure your business activity and your business performance. In terms of distribution by source, this is what I mentioned. It's really important to know not only what's happening with your volume of reviews overall, but where are they coming from and what are the changes that are occurring on those different review platforms. And know, for example, what is your biggest source of reviews? What's your, you know, what are your top 3 biggest sources of reviews? And quite often we see with businesses that they are sometimes surprised at which ones sit in their top 3, in particular with Google, even though Google has seen significant growth over many years in terms of volume. It still seems to come up as a surprise to some businesses that Google is as big as it is, and that in many cases it now sits above TripAdvisor in terms of volume of reviews. But remember also the differences in platforms. Like, for example, with Google reviews, there's no, as you know, there's no character limit. There's no minimum character requirement to write a review on Google. So people can just say excellent, and that counts as a review, which is great because it's excellent. But TripAdvisor has that minimum character limit. So the quality in terms of your reviews, in terms of the quality of feedback that you're getting, TripAdvisor still offers a really, really great detailed analysis. When people have to write a more detailed review, they have to think about it more, they think about what to say, they offer more valuable feedback for you. So remember, you know, to keep that in perspective as well. But you can see here again, this is across the whole group for that same period of time. And you can see that the declines are occurring across all review platforms, not just one. This is taken from a group of Australian operators. So we're moving sort of out of the NT, but just to sort of give you some concept of what the percentage, and this was based on a full year. This is not on just that COVID period. This is based on the 365-day period. And you can see that Booking by far is the biggest contributor in terms of volume of reviews across the country, followed by Google and then TripAdvisor and Expedia and so on. These are just the top ones. There's obviously many more review platforms, but just to give you an overview of what's happening there. So in terms of industry trends, obviously the rising Google and travel is really significant. Higher use of technology, we know, is happening. and in more recent times, the other industry trends we see is that everyone is trying to do more with less resources relating to guest experience, and also, you know, across the business as well. And of course, the focus initially on local rather than international travel. So there's some of the key things that we're seeing across, not just in Australia, but across the world. Obviously, we know guest feedback channels have proliferated. And despite the fact that we've seen recent declines because of declines in business, the trend for review volume continues to grow and continues to be a significant part of the guest experience and being able to provide feedback. The other thing that we're seeing is that there's become higher expectations of shorter response times. So people are after a more immediate response than they may have used to have been. And this is something to consider, not just for reviews, but also if you're sending a guest survey or using any sort of form of messaging and so on, is to keep in mind that that there is higher expectations around response times. So when you're developing out a strategy around responding, thinking about those things. I'm just going to outline some tips and best practice around focusing on improving the guest experience, specifically relating to guest feedback. Interesting to sort of reflect on, firstly, what the goal is obviously is to consistently exceed expectations. And that's what really helps with your reputation. So identifying and delivering on brand standards and promises are really important. As I mentioned before, establishing metrics for measuring guest satisfaction, because otherwise, how are you going to know how you are doing? Implementing tools and processes. So what tools do you have to measure, and what processes do you have when you take that feedback? What are you going to do with it? You know, are you going to implement some processes around actioning that feedback is part of the key, because just reading the information is only part of the story. One of the other keys is communication within. So providing staff with training and guidelines and leadership around how you or what you see and how you value guest feedback and what they do, and who is responsible for actioning guest feedback as well is really important, and sharing that information. In terms of then how you track and analyse the guest feedback, obviously there's a number of ways you can do that through various tools. The GRI, which ReviewPro provide, which you see in those reports, is one of the key ways. And what the GRI does, or the Global Review Index, is that it's a benchmark reputation score. It's an industry standard, and it's calculated from reviews that are aggregated across all those review platforms for you as a business. And it then gives you a point at which you can start benchmarking how you are performing over time, maybe compared to the industry. So you'll be able to see some comparisons between how you're doing versus maybe the NT overall. And it's really key that any KPIs you have around measuring guest feedback, that they're monitored regularly, and it's part of your discussion within your organisation regularly. You know, the best practices that we see, businesses that do really well with this, are incorporating it into all of their processes when they're having meetings weekly, monthly, and so on. And specific reviews and survey comments should really be monitored and discussed at an operational level every day, really. And, you know, for hotels that have their daily briefings, they incorporate this into their daily operation. And it really helps with communication. It helps drive the message through to everyone of what the impact is on experience and how it affects them. And our other little mantra is that guest satisfaction is a team sport, and it comes from everywhere. So if your owner or your CEO or your manager and so on, if they're not paying to guest satisfaction, then no one's going to prioritise it. So it's really important that at the top, you know, they're looking at this. But also if the lowest paid employees are not paying attention to guest satisfaction, then it's going to directly impact the guest satisfaction. So you can see that kind of across the whole organisation, it's a really important thing to monitor. So, I need to be missing some graphics here. one. Okay. So these are just some captured from ReviewPro, but you'll see as you go through the dashboard that there are a number of different areas where you can capture what I just showed you before, things like the overall GRI, your management response and so on. But you can dig even deeper and get down to things like semantics. So looking at what type of things people are talking about. And so if you take an example of just one review where someone might talk about the service, the friendliness, maybe something about the food that was offered, the location and so on. What ReviewPro do is capture all of that and bracket everything into categories and concepts and what was mentioned positively and negatively, regardless of what language it was written in, so that you can kind of see a good macro overall bird's eye view of what people are talking about positively and negatively. So it's not just about your score, it's all about also about what people are saying. It can help capture things that you may possibly miss, or it may be things that you kind of know are occurring and you're seeing it because you're reading about it, but having it in a format like this helps you make decisions based on data rather than instinct. So you can go and say, well, we know that we've been having a lot of comments about our room, but actually exactly how many were there and exactly how many were negative. So if we need to go to an owner and maybe ask for more money to invest in some upgrades or making changes or investing in resources, this kind of information is frequently used for that purpose, and it helps back up those decisions and can also help you down the track reflect and look back at how well those decisions were, because if you can turn and change the tide, you can see the results of making those decisions based on this kind of data. So just going back to basics of online reviews and thinking about, you know, why are they important for a start? So your number of reviews and also, you know, why is the volume of reviews important? And it's because it has a direct impact on many KPIs, and these are just some of the KPIs. So things like your ranking on review sites. So your volume of reviews has a direct impact on your ranking on various review sites and also on third-party websites like OTAs. We know that they're very transparent about that, and so it's really important because, and the reason that ranks as important is that it's all about having fresh content and relevant content. So like any website, and having it something that's fresh and new is going to be relevant and it's going to be more interesting for users. So that's why these websites like to have fresh content. And if you think about it as you as a user, if you're going somewhere or you're even thinking of buying a product and you go and look at reviews, you're generally not as interested in what someone said 12 months ago. You want to know what someone said about their most recent experience. So it strictly just comes back to that. And that's why you always need constant new reviews. It also affects your ranking in the search engine. So the classic example of that is Google. So Google reviews, your Google reviews have a direct impact on Google placement. Your volume, not only your volume, but the quality of your reviews, so your review scores, whether you're responding to reviews on Google or not, also has a direct impact on that algorithm. And at the end of the day, with Google, it's so important because that's your key to direct business, you know. So in terms of, you know, how reviews help you with marketing, it's such a straightforward relationship between having great reviews on Google and then someone clicking straight through to your website and making a booking. Obviously, your overall online reputation score is going to be affected by your review volume, and also at the end of the day, it's going to affect your overall sales and conversion rates. And how it affects conversion rates is that it gives people confidence to book. So you have to remember that people are always looking for a reason to book and a confidence factor, and that really assists with that. They're looking for that. I want to make that decision, but I want to be kind of reassured that I'm making the right decision. And reading reviews is a way that people make that decision. So in terms of the impact of online reviews, encouraging your customers or potential customers to spend their money with you because your business appears reliable and trustworthy in comparison to your competitors. So it also helps you market against your competitors. Because if you look at a few different businesses, and most people are when they're choosing between things, if they look at a business that only has, say, 2 reviews, quite often people are like, they've only got 2 reviews. Is anyone really using them? Like, you know, so there's that kind of slight feeling of uneasiness about someone that doesn't have many reviews. The other reason is that it's really easy for guests to understand better what you offer when there are a higher volume of testimonials. So the more people can read about what others experienced, it helps them get a better overall understanding of what you're offering. Even though you might say, oh, but I've got all that on my website, that's fine. But people tend to kind of more easily read something that's come from someone else, and it's sometimes a bit more digestible in a review. So it's really important to remember that that's going to really help you. So the more you have, the more people are talking about what you do, the more it's going to help others understand what you do. And then, of course, it creates a stronger sense of reliability and credibility around your brand. So it's going to, again, like I was saying before, it's going to increase the chance that they will book with you. And all this is obviously coming back to revenue. So we encourage you to take a proactive approach to managing your review volume. Encourage more guests to invest time in recording their experiences through reviews. It's obviously paramount to your business, and it's also paramount for you to understand your business and analyse their comments and look at what proactive measures you may need to take to improve, or also to reiterate what you're doing well, quite frankly, as well, if anything. And the more you have, comparing and contrasting 50 reviews is going to give you a much better global picture of overall guest satisfaction in a small handful. So that sort of comes down to that sort of statistical value of having more information. It's going to be more valuable for you. So in terms of asking for reviews, before you ask for reviews, think about also, have a little reflection on, are you creating a remarkable experience? You know, what are people going to be talking about? So you want to make sure you're creating some sort of an experience that is worth talking about, even if it's a really small thing. And there's many, many really small business examples that we see of people that do really small things on, say, check-in or welcome, or, you know, little hotels that leave, you know, cute little ducks in their bathrooms that people take photos of, all those sorts of things, you know, little things. It doesn't have to be an amazing experience. It costs a lot of money, but think about all those little ways that can create an experience that's worth talking about. And remember that unfulfilled expectations are the #1 cause of dissatisfied guests. So think about, what are your marketing materials talking about? And they should really accurately reflect the experience you offer, because people are going to be using that as their, and setting the benchmark in terms of what they're expecting. I get asked this question a lot. Is it okay to actually ask for reviews? And yes, of course it is. There's no reason why asking reviews should actually even be a difficult or awkward process. You can approach your guest in quite a different variety of ways, but use what works best for your business and your personal style, because some people say, oh, that doesn't really suit our guests, or doesn't really suit us. And so there might be a different way that you can ask for a review that will be more suitable. So these are some examples. So when to ask for review during the checkout process, or when they've completed their experience is an obvious one. A sign at a desk is also good. And it's sometimes good for asking directly, if directly asking them doesn't really suit your target group, because sometimes that doesn't. Follow-up emails when receiving unsolicited feedback. This is a really, really good one, especially for small businesses, because we know that quite often you hear of owners that say, yeah, actually, I'm a bit hands-on, and I walk around and talk to people while they're doing an experience, or while they're doing the tour, or, you know, while they're in-house. And quite often people will say, oh, this is great, we love this. This is the best thing we've done in the Northern Territory. That's when you can say, you know, thank them and thank them for the feedback. But that's when you can say, hey, you know what would be even better than getting this feedback is, we would really love it if you could share that online, because reviews are so important to us and it really helps us get new business. And people's motivation around writing reviews is often around, they want to give back to you as a business, but they also want to share it with other people, and they want to give to the, you know, the traveling community of who's coming next. So remember that generally people's intentions around writing reviews is they want to share it with others. So use those kind of examples where you can. So we're going to go on to management response. The importance of management response, you know, hopefully you will know that it is really, really important to respond to feedback. Not just the person that's reviewed you, but others find it really, really valuable when they see a management response, and it's very often very indicative to a traveller of what an importance you place on guest feedback, and that makes a difference to them. And quite often people will say that a thoughtful management response to a bad review actually improves their impression of the business and makes them feel more comfortable about booking it. And I've had anecdotally many, many times where I've had, you know, owners that have told me, or operators, that they've had people that tell them, you know, up front, hey, you know what, I know I booked with you because I really like how you respond to your reviews. And even I had a hotelier once tell me that he said, oh, I was really kind of like dubious about, you know, this until I went on my own holiday, and we were going to go to Fiji, looking at reviews, and we saw some negative ones, but I really liked how the manager replied, and I booked it based on that. And then he realized, you know, the penny dropped of, yeah, actually I do that too, you know. So it does provide obviously a feeling of satisfaction, and it also reinforces that making the right decision. I had a look at some of the management response ratios based on some samples, and for these Australian operators, and this just reiterates what I was talking about before, and highlights here, how and why I'm not sure that the Google response ratio is a lot lower than those other two channels, when, for all the reasons I mentioned before, it should be equaling, if not higher. So have a think, maybe it's worth going back to your own stats and find out, or you may even know in your head how many Google reviews you're replying to. So in terms of just best practice around response policy for reviews, these are just some tips. We don't tell you how to do it or what to do or how many to respond to. Everyone has to create their own strategy around that, because everyone has different resources. Firstly, don't feel obliged to respond to all reviews. Think speed before quantity. It's better to respond more quickly to more recent reviews and less of them than to try and respond to everything. Concentrate on the most influential sites and channels for you. If you can, try to respond in the language of the review. You don't need to. It's not a requirement, but if you have the ability to, it's great. It adds some flavour, and it also helps if it's a language that's important to you for business. And remember that the reviews are public. So if you're using templates, make sure they don't look like a robotic response. Make sure that they're personal. And key is provide staff with training and clear guidelines. If you're delegating people to respond, you need to give them some clear guidelines around the type of tone that you use and how they respond and how they follow up. So this is just an example. This uses guest feedback to educate others and highlight the benefits. So this is an actual example of a review. And the person mentioned some self-catering pods, saying that they were great. And the management response, which we see, this is like a 10 out of 10 response, saying that they're great. And then they give a whole lot of extra information about their sleeping pods, because remember, the key to management response is that it is a selling tool. It's your space to tell everyone about how good you are. So if someone said something that's good about you, why not provide even more information? Because if I want to go and stay there and I read a review about self-catering pods, I'm like, oh, that's cool, they've got self-catering pods. And then I see the management response and I see more information, that's going to help me make my decision, and it's going to, you know, impress me. The other thing is, remember that people kind of select reviews based on their own needs and requirements. So for example, a family, right? So if I'm traveling as a family and I go on to look at reviews for, say, a holiday park, and I looked at reviews internally, I'm filtering reviews based on people that talk about traveling as a family. And I'm probably going to read their reviews more than I'm going to read others, because not everyone reads every review. So if someone talks about family travel and they say, oh, it was great because the kids like the jumping pillows, then jump on that, literally and figuratively, and write your response, you know, to give more information about kids stuff, you know, so that you know that people who are traveling as families are going to read those responses, use it as a sales tool. So quite often people's feeling about responding to reviews tends to skew towards, oh, I've got to reply to the negative ones, and they get challenged with responding to positive ones because they're not really sure what to say. So this is probably one of the best tips that we have around that. There's a really cool guide that helps you define a management response strategy, and we're going to share some of these links after the webinar. So we're going to just, the last little bit of the session, we're just going to reflect a bit about what's happening now and a few tips around that. And so we have a little new poll. So this one is around what you think about what's happened post-COVID. So do you believe that guest behaviour and expectations will permanently change post-COVID-19? So let us know if you think yes, no, or if you're unsure. So we've done our own, we've done a previous poll on this, which I'm going to share the results on the next slide about what the industry thinks. But it'll be interesting to see what you all think.
We've had about 10 of 20 people so far, so just leave it open for a little bit.
Yep.
$13. I think that's good for now. Quick, get in there, guys. All right, cool. Here we go. Here's the results.
Okay, so yes, 85% overwhelming, and I tend to agree. And I think if we look at the next slide, we can see the industry. We did our own survey, and pretty much the same, just a few less, also said the same thing. So we all know that you know, that guest behaviour and expectations are going to change. So we know that you sort of instinctively know that traveller and guest needs have changed. This tag cloud represents just how much they're focused on. In a recent study, this was done by Fuel Marketing. The consumers were asked, what is the first word that you think of when considering travel right now? And these were the most popular words. So you can see that essentially today guests want to feel safe. You know, so this has really changed a lot, right, since before COVID. So recently, as a company also, we studied 5,000 global hotels just to find out what guests are mentioning along with the coronavirus pandemic. As an illustration of the need for fresh insights into guest behaviour and needs in constantly changing times, we were interested to check out what travellers were saying about the coronavirus in their online reviews using our semantic analysis that I mentioned before. So for those of you that are already familiar with it, the semantic analysis is a tool that detects mentions of the key concepts within feedback and assigns them as either positive or negative. So to help you understand the impact COVID-19 is having on online reputation, we've created a category called medical and health within the semantic analysis, and this detects concepts and synonyms in 17 languages related to sort of specifically to the coronavirus, like COVID-19, pandemic, state of emergency, that kind of thing. And we took a look at some of some sample hotels to see what they have received. So some of those you can see here on the screen, and some people are, you know, responding quite well to the situation. As in any crisis, it's really important to know right away what your guests are saying. To ensure that you stay informed, you can set alerts with specific concepts and receive an email when they're mentioned. You can update your current response strategy to fit these exceptional circumstances. It's really key to communicate clearly with everyone on how they should respond to COVID-19 reviews and what the escalation process is that they should follow in case a guest makes some serious accusations. So this is going to help you provide a quick and swift response, and it's obviously crucial when you're handling sensitive crises. Responding to reviews is now a priority, whether positive or negative. If your guests took the time to leave a positive comment, thank them for their support and show appreciation. I think this is really key at the moment. If your guest is concerned about any aspect of their time, escalate it to a senior member of staff or take the time to follow up and alleviate any worries as quickly as possible. I'm sure many of you are doing this anyway, but it's just something to really think about and incorporate into what you're doing in your processes. And remember that it's not only your guests, but thousands of potential guests that will be looking to be able to regain trust and confidence. So ensure that you stand out in this. So as I just mentioned, you can set alerts for specific concepts and receive an email when they are mentioned. This is for those of you that have access to the ReviewPro dashboard. And I just showed an example here of how you can really easily go into the filters. I put in COVID, it came up with 8 reviews, and you can then create alerts around new content that mention that word. So you can do that and get an alert every time that's mentioned if that's important to you. Or you can even download a report and so on. In fact, this is from a Northern Territory property, as you can see. And again, great. Like this is a positive, you know, that people are literally wanting to mention that how the staff did everything possible to make it enjoyable, and, you know, and people are accepting of things that are changing. And so it's really important for you to know as a business, how are they feeling? Are they happy with it? Are they not happy with it? And what you can do. Obviously, cleanliness is going to be a top priority, and this is a sample we did of some hoteliers that were asked if they'd what they'd implemented and what they would be implementing in terms of specifically around cleaning practices. And you can see that it's obviously a huge priority, and as I'm sure it is with everyone. Here's another one, similar to what we just did before, a poll, but this was around what sort of things are being implemented. This was specifically to hoteliers around enhanced cleaning protocols. So just to wrap up a couple of summary points. Really, with management response and reviews, now more than ever, reviews are going to be a key to your reputation and recovery. So it's important to take this time to review your management response strategy. You know, have you got a management response strategy? If so, what are the key components? Like, who's responsible for responding? Which reviews will you prioritize? And have you considered how review responses can even maybe help you steal market share? In this recovery phase, there's going to be fewer travellers and competition is going to be increased. So how can you use your responses to improve your reputation and create an edge on your competitors? Use management responses to communicate things like your new check-in and arrival procedures, social distancing policies and new cleanliness practices, etc. And use templates to save time. But just be sure to adapt that personal element as well. In thinking about some guidelines around how to manage reviews, obviously, you know, as we kind of come back to operation, online reviews might not seem like a top priority right now, but having a positive online presence now is actually very important. So read, obviously, you know what I've said, read what people are saying, and, you know, gain insights into their needs and how you can accommodate them. As I showed you before, you can set up those alerts and around mentions and monitor that. Also remember to implement changes according to the feedback. And, you know, these are some of the guidelines, like reading, you know, responding to reviews is important. You know, you can maybe with fewer reviews, you may want to alter your management response strategy. Maybe you can respond to all reviews for a little while until it comes back to more volume when you can't respond to everything. And remember, when you're responding to Google reviews, if you're prioritizing those, keep in mind that by default, Google shows the users the most relevant reviews, and relevance for Google is based on word count, pictures, and the number of times that the name of the establishment is mentioned. So if you're thinking about which ones to respond to, if you pick up on those ones, you know that they're probably going to be the ones that are most shown when someone is searching. So they're going to see your response more frequently if you respond to those, if that makes sense. Obviously, prioritise those reviews that mention any COVID-19 related issues, and be time sensitive. You know, and as I said, use it for a sales tool. Like when people are starting to plan their holidays again, they're going to be extra careful before they make a reservation. So if you respond correctly to all those reviews, you can use that opportunity to speak to prospective guests shopping for their next holiday as well. So here's just an example we picked out of what we would consider a bit of a missed opportunity. Where someone's mentioned how they've handled the situation very well, but the response is just a very stock standard one. So really what they should have done is take that and then thank them and actually highlight what they have done with their standards. You know, and in this case, you can create a few little templated paragraphs around what you're doing around COVID-19 that you can include in your responses, because people do want to read that. And then obviously if there are issues, you know, really important to just be transparent and honest, you know, apologise for the experience and so on, admit your wrongdoings, welcome them back in happier times and so on, and just, you know, highlight that these are unusual times, etc. Obviously consider your workflows and processes. Like I said, lay the right foundations, think about all those things around your strategy, and be ready to welcome the new guest. Just to reiterate some of the points I've made already, obviously I said reviews are more important than ever. People are going to be using them to make their decisions and so on. And then finally, think about the new guest and what it means for you specifically as a business. So firstly, it's going to be important to focus on changes in customer experience and expectations. What preferences a guest will have in your operation. And secondly, consider switches in customer perceptions. So for example, the market strength of apartments versus hotels, where they have their own kitchens and self-sufficient and can practice social distancing, they may now be perceived in a different way to how they were previously. So think about how those sorts of perceptions have impacted you as a business. That say for activities, how might perceptions have changed for certain activities, from like walking, hiking to visiting attractions, compared to like visiting mass attractions and so on. And then at a broader level, how have customer perceptions changed for a destination? And I think you guys are a classic example where the perception, not that it's changed of the Northern Territory, but the importance of what your selling point is and your point of difference is now so impactful in terms of people's perception about what they can experience when they come to the Northern Territory. So think about all those things and how you can work that to your own benefit. And obviously also just about consumption, how people are, what's changing in terms of their length of stay and your domestic versus international travel and so on. So all those kinds of things are really important. So your key takeaways are things, obviously, my final comment really is that clear communication is more important than ever. It's imperative that I think we've all learned that. It makes your brand accessible and trustworthy. It helps you communicate new laws and regulations. It helps clarify your booking policies and so on. And just consider all those other things, like you've got less staff, less languages, how you're going to use that. And think also, a little bit further about how people are opting towards automated versus and touchless technology and how you're going to adapt to that kind of thing as well. So I'm just conscious, so I think I've gone pretty much almost on the 45 minutes. So Stephen will be impressed because he thought that I was never going to get through all my slides in that time.
Well done. That was perfect.
So yeah, so I know that we've allowed some time for some Q&A, and that's kind of why we kept everyone quiet during the presentation, so I could get through everything, and you can think of any sort of questions you may have or comments. Even if you want to share some experiences around your own experience, please feel free to drop them into the chat. I think Anna and Stephen may have been collecting some of the questions along the way.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions lined up to ask as well.
Yeah.
I've just got a quick little something that I want to say briefly. Thank you so much, Avril, for that presentation. It was really, really insightful. I've been taking loads and loads of notes, but hopefully I'll be able to apply to a few of the business enterprise meetings that I'm planning on having with local tourism businesses. So some of you will already have direct access to ReviewPro, which you can get by either paying for it or you will have free access if you've got the Quality Tourism Accredited Business green tick, which Stephen's going to talk about a little bit in a moment. And for those of you who don't have direct access, you should be receiving a ReviewPro report for your business from Tourism NT before too long. This kind of report is also something that Stephen and I do bring to our business enterprise meetings for you to have a look over as well. So moving on to questions, a few of the sites that people use to answer or to respond to reviews, for example, TripAdvisor, Google, Booking.com, you need to be kind of logged in and registered as the operator before you can respond. A couple of weeks ago, we had a session from Google and they explained a little bit how you can claim your Google profile as a business. For TripAdvisor, I'm just sharing a link. So business owners can use this link to register their business and then respond to reviews. With Booking.com, Avril, this may not be a question that you can answer because it's about a business that you're not specifically involved with, but is there a way to log into Booking.com as a business owner?
Yeah, so if you put your inventory on Booking.com, and part of that is that you have access to an extranet where you feed your rates and your information. And so access to that extranet allows you to respond to their reviews. Yeah, so anyone that sells their product through booking.com will already have access to the extranet and be able to respond to booking reviews.
That's good to know. So I've just had a question about whether or not ReviewPro is suitable for tour operators or whether it's just for hotels. Avril, I'll hand over to you for that one.
Yeah, and yes, it is. We started off, you know, when we very first started ReviewPro 10 years ago and we developed the product, it really started with hotels, which was more of a natural outcome of how reviews actually evolved, is that reviews started very much on hotels and accommodation and then sort of moved to a lot of the others. And so initially the businesses that really needed the help with volume were hotels. And so we started with that, but no, the actual solution monitors reviews. So it can monitor reviews whether you're a hotel or tour operator or an attraction, restaurants as well. So we essentially start at the starting point, whoever the operator is, we map in all the channels that you have reviews for. And then ongoing, it just picks up all your new reviews as they come in and assesses them and goes into a dashboard.
And I believe there's a minimum number of reviews that an operator would need as well before ReviewPro starts analysing the data.
Yes and no. So we can start analysing the data straight away. So as long as you have some reviews, the tracking will be there. You'll be able to see all your reviews come in. You'll be able to read them, respond, all that kind of thing, and the analysis. What we need a little bit of volume for is that global review index score that I showed you, which is we call the GRI, which takes all your review scores across various platforms and creates an ongoing score. You need a minimum of 25 review scores over the period of 12 months for that to kick in, not from the start. So if you set up on ReviewPro, we go back historically 3 years, so it already picks up. So you don't have to wait 12 months to get those reviews. But if you start up and you haven't got 25 reviews in the last year, then the score won't kick in until you have. It's just because it's an algorithm and it's based on a mathematical equation. It kind of needs, it's like I was saying about about when you're analysing for your business, the reason for having a volume is that volume gives you a much better perspective and a better global perspective of how you're doing as a business. The same for a mathematical algorithm.
That's useful. I know back in the day when I was a tour guide, there was this common thread where businesses would have an incentive for tour guides to encourage businesses to review the product, and if your name was mentioned, you got a little bonus. Do you have any tips on getting clients to actually write reviews in the first place?
Yeah, so that page that I showed that I mentioned, and I think we're going to share this presentation with everyone. Yeah, so there's a page on tips about how to ask for reviews. And yeah, some of the key things, the key ones are, you know, either while they're, as I said, unsolicited feedback, during the check, when they've finished the experience, during that process where they're finishing up, or by email afterwards. You know, there's a number of different mechanisms that can kick in. And to your point about getting little rewards where you're mentioned positively, I think that's really good, and I hear about that a lot. And in fact, we have a client in Queensland that's that are in the they have a it's like a sailboat on the Whitsundays or something. And when they join, this is great because every month we have an award for who gets mentioned the most in reviews, obviously positively. And normally they had to do all that manually and go through and check all the reviews across all the different platforms. With that filter option, you can go in and just filter, and you can just put in your name. So you can put Anna and search for all the reviews that mention Anna, and you'd see, oh, Anna's got 8. And then you can save all those as different views, and each month you just go in and you just look at them all, or even then create a scheduled report, and you get it all in you know, timely fashion. So yeah,
that's really nice. My final question before handing over to Stephen, who I believe has a few of his own questions, is about wording replies to reviews. I've spoken to a number of operators who feel quite intimidated by actually responding to reviews because they're not quite sure how to word them. You've already given some good tips on wording reviews, but have you got any more kind of key tips and takeaways to think about when you're sitting down behind a computer?
Yeah, I think you need to, the key is, I think you need to sound as personal as you can without sounding like a robot. And feel free to kind of use your own personal style, obviously keeping within professional, because it does create the opportunity for people to see a bit of your personality as a business. So as a business, if you're kind of fun, you know, you can keep that sort of style of reply. Like I saw a great reply once from a business that had received actually a negative review. They did ferry services across to an island, and someone had written a negative review, which was actually not even about the service. It was obviously happens. They'd written a negative review and said that they hated their local ads on television, you know. And so actually what they did, they turned this whole thing around and they wrote this great response, which was very much in keeping with their sort of tongue-in-cheek style. And they were like, thanks so much for the review. And hey, we're all, you know, let's keep it all PC here. We're all really friendly here. And we'd love for you to come across and actually see, I think it was Magnetic Island one day. And did you know that Magnetic Island has like the highest population of koalas on an island or something? Yeah, they have threw in a few little facts. And it was, I thought that was a great example where if you're not sure how to word it, but just keep it, you know, in the style that you are, I think really helps. And I mean, I read that and I was, you know, I was like, wow, I didn't even know that happened there. And it so totally takes the focus away from what that person had said in the negative review. So yeah, those sorts of things definitely. And, you know, keep it, obviously always keep it professional. In terms of sometimes being able to reply, if people have mentioned lots of things, one of the keys I see people do well is to group those things. When you're addressing those things, kind of group them together. So if there's a whole lot of things all related to service, keep that in a group and then address the other thing that they've mentioned about something else, and try and sort of keep it in a digestible format.
Thanks, Avril. One question which Anna touched on, but I think I'll get from a different point of view, is a number of businesses that I've talked with have paper surveys that they give out to their customers after they finish a tour or whatnot. What are your tips? How do you translate these paper-based responses, reviews to the business, which are helpful but not helpful for the prospective customer? Do you have any tips on how to translate that across to the online world?
Yeah, I mean, people still use paper surveys. I mean, there are ways that you can digitalize that these days, and you can still have, there are businesses that kind of have both. So like they'll have a digital version, which will be the same set of questions that they ask in the paper version. And then when they collect the paper versions, they actually just load their answers. It's quite easy to do there. I mean, it still involves a slight manual process, but they can still they just go into the system and they just add those in, and then they've got everything together in one. And then there is the ability with some systems with surveys, you can use the ability to publish. So if you ask them for a review in the survey, you can publish the review to your own website. And if you have that and you're just putting it into the system, you could still do it that way, is probably what I'd suggest. I think, you know, if you can, obviously the more digital, more contactless, the more easy it is for people to write reviews and give you feedback, the better, right? So sometimes it is easier just to do it by hand on a piece of paper. But I think more and more people now are getting so much more used to doing things in a digital fashion. And quite often it's when people are on their way home, or they're in transit, they've actually got time, they're waiting at the airport and they've got time to sit and write something. You know, you may actually achieve more out of having at least both options rather than just having the paper one.
And this question for me stems from a business that has an older demographic of customer, and so obviously not so used to the online world. But hopefully since COVID and since being able to use things like this, Zoom, forced to hopefully moving forward, even that demographic would be able to respond to reviews online from now. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's definitely a trend that I've only just experienced it personally, but it's amazing how this whole experience has kind of pushed a lot of that demographic into, you know, pushed them kicking and fighting a bit into that world. But I know from my own in-laws who are in their 70s and 80s, you know, they now like doing, you know, my mother-in-law was doing a Zumba class by Zoom, and you know, they're using WhatsApp groups and things like that. And I think the biggest growing WhatsApp user groups are older demographics, you know, so it's I don't think they're as hesitant as we kind of think they are, but it's definitely still that element around that, you know, that don't, but it's definitely changing and growing for sure. And I think this experience has definitely pushed a few of them into the new age.
And so those reviews that we've received offline, does ReviewPro pick them up and we'd be able to see those?
If you were using, so they're not necessarily classed as public reviews, because they are kind of classed as like your own private survey. So you would use like a survey solution to load that into your own survey feedback, and then you can choose to share it publicly if you want to, as like a testimonial on your own website. But it's not going to be shown on, obviously, TripAdvisor or anything like that. It's mainly if you wanted to use on your own website that you consider something like that.
And ReviewPro only picks it up from the review sites, not from your own personal website?
Yes, from public review sites, yeah.
Which is over 100 or nearly 200. How many review sites does ReviewPro gather from?
Yeah, I think the latest.
It's growing.
Yeah, 175 and growing. Yeah. But, you know, not everyone, obviously, not every business. In fact, there'd be probably no business that has that many review platforms, because we deal with clients all around the world. There are certain pockets around the world that have different review sites that are relevant just for that country or just for that region and so on. So, for example, in Germany, there's a very, very big review site called Holiday Check, which is huge in Germany, but not so big over here. But some Australian businesses still receive reviews on them, but very few compared to European businesses, for example. Yeah.
Okay. Last question before I go into conclusion mode, but I've also talked with businesses that have the mentality that putting their head in the sand in terms of reviews is the best thing. What they don't know and is bliss for them. There's no stress and no worries. Is that also how the customer would feel? Like, do they also not see the reviews, or is it actually live if they post a review? Is it just to the deficit of the business?
Well, I think it's to both, really, because if someone's but my opinion is, and everyone's got their own opinion, but my opinion is if someone's taken the time to write you some feedback, then it's a courtesy to thank them for it and take it in. One of my pet hates is when someone sends me a survey after I've stayed somewhere, and I complete it and I take a bit of time and I never get a reply. I find that really annoying, because I've actually taken quite a bit of time and thoughtful, and especially with surveys, you give quite a lot of feedback because you feel like they've asked you because they want some help. And then if they don't reply, you're kind of like, well, you know, did that mean anything? So yes, so I think for the person that's giving the feedback, it's nice for them to know that, you know, and to be acknowledged. But as I said, I see it as three elements, actually. There's the person that's wrote it, there's the business that can benefit from having that feedback about their own business, and, you know, what's not valuable about having, you know, feedback about your own experience. And then there's the potential customers, you know, that are reading it. So, you know, so don't you want to know what all your potential customers see as basically your reputation? You know, that's how before they come and experience you, that's going to be their expectation and their view. Yeah. So I think it's important in all those kind of domains.
Yeah. And to summarize your presentation, my points that I got was unfulfilled expectations is the number one reason that customers are dissatisfied. That's a pretty big one. And obviously flipping it on its head is consistently exceeding the customer expectations is what you're aiming to do. So that's a good little nugget for us to take away. And using your reviews as a marketing tool to upsell, to expand, and to write in with the next customer in mind as you do it, because that's the people that will be reading it next. So thank you, Avril. Thanks for your time today. It's been really informative and helpful and high engagement as well. I enjoyed doing those 2 poll posts with you as well today. And thank you everyone for choosing options in that. So thank you, Avril.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And so everybody, as you've seen today, ReviewPro is a powerful tool that you can utilize in your business. And I did touch on the quality tourism accreditation. So if you are accredited and you have these logos from us, you have access to a free ReviewPro account. So let me know if you're unsure of that. I can actually help you with your login details. So what is this accreditation thing, just in case you guys are interested? The National Quality Tourism Accreditation is a business development program, and it's suitable for small, big businesses, and it helps with giving you the necessary tools and resources to assist and update business policies, procedures, to make sure that your business has ongoing sustainability and best practice. And so businesses that do display this logo have met specific rigors of the highest regard, because it is a national program. So I'd recommend contacting myself around that program. And also some awesome information that I can share with you today is that for those of you that are accredited already, as your Northern Territory representative, Tourism Top End, we're proud to share the information that your renewals, which are normally happening pretty soon, are now extended for 1 year until 2021, June 30. So that's great news. It also means that it gives you guys some respite, because we're so passionate about giving you every opportunity for your business to recover. And under the accreditation, above that is the Quality Tourism Framework, which is the BROLGA Awards, star ratings for hotels, and also this accreditation program. But what we've done recently, which you've no doubt heard of, is the COVID Clean Practicing Business module. And this is also underway. We've had 70 odd businesses go through the modules, and for the benefit as well. So recommend getting onto that. We've got links as well for the COVID Clean module. And also running on the ground right now, as one of my last points, is that next Wednesday, 1st of July, it's a big week for many of us as we unroll the voucher stimulus that is coming through, the $200 the voucher that's coming through. So Tourism Central Australia and Tourism Top End, we've both run some webinars. So there's online recordings available for you to view. We're also running one-on-one sessions. So make sure that if you're confused or needing assistance, give us a call. And we also assist with loading your product, making sure that your product is there, ready and bookable for the 1st of July, because that's when the residents of NT can receive their voucher. Next week, I think, is a really interesting topic that we're going to talk about in our next Power Up tutorial. We have Nicole Campbell. She's from Tourism NT, and she's the Trade Distribution Development Coordinator. And so Nicole is coming online Wednesday. It is the 1st of July, so I understand that it will be busy, but I highly recommend coming because it is about distribution. Distribution is key to getting your product out there. And so come along, same time, same place next week, and we'll talk about understanding the trade distribution system and how to get started in it. So thank you very much, everybody. We will put our contact details up on the slide after this, and thank you, Avril, again for coming. I'll see you next week.